There was a time when winter wasn't just about the cold. It was about the deafening roar of a two-stroke engine cutting through the icy air, tearing across frozen lakes with a cloud of powder in its wake. Snowmobiles weren't just a means of transportation. They were a symbol of freedom, adventure, and raw power. Back then, it wasn't just Ski-Doo and Polaris leading the charge. The snowmobile world was a wild frontier, with dozens of brands fighting for dominance. Your snowmobile didn't just get you through the snow, it got you through winter, and through a cloud of smoke thick enough to make your neighbors think you were hosting a BBQ in the middle of a blizzard. If you grew up in the snow-covered regions of North America in the 1960s and 70s, names like Snowjet, Rupp, and even John Deere might ring a bell. Some machines were designed for speed, others for utility, but they all helped shape the sport we know today. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. Do you enjoy the video? Your support means the world to us. Help us grow and hit that subscribe button. These snowmobiles weren't just machines. They were part of a culture, a way of life that brought families together on weekends and set the stage for the winter adventures we still crave today. They represented freedom, excitement, and a chance to escape the mundane, if only for a few hours. Snowmobiling wasn't just a sport. It was a lifestyle, one that defined winter in a way that no other vehicle could. So, what happened to them? Why did these once powerful brands fade away while a few others made it to the top? The rise and fall of these vintage snowmobile giants is a tale of bold innovation, fierce competition, and the brutal survival of the fittest. Some gambled on designs that didn't work out. Others couldn't survive economic downturns or technological advancements. The market was changing fast, and only the strongest could keep up. In this video, we're cranking up the engine and heading back to the golden age of snowmobiling. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to keep the legacy alive. Before snowmobiles became the high-speed, high-tech machines they are today, winter travel was a whole different beast. If you needed to get somewhere in deep snow, you were looking at dog sleds, snowshoes, or, if you were lucky, some kind of early tracked vehicle that moved at the speed of a lazy walk. But that all changed when a few tinkerers and engineers decided to strap engines onto sleds and see what happened. The idea of a motorized snow machine dates back to the early 1900s, but it wasn't until the 1920s and 30s that inventors really started experimenting. One of the most famous pioneers was Joseph Armand Bombardier, a Canadian mechanic who wanted to build a machine that could handle deep snow. In 1935, he created the first true snowmobile, a lightweight, propeller-driven vehicle that glided over the snow with ease. This invention laid the groundwork for everything that followed. Bombardier's success quickly captured the attention of others, and soon more engineers and innovators from around the world were trying to improve on his designs. During the mid-20th century, snowmobiles evolved from basic machines used for utility purposes to recreational vehicles that became widely popular for winter sports and outdoor exploration. By the 1960s, snowmobiles had shifted from their utilitarian roots to becoming an essential part of winter recreation. This transformation was driven by the development of more powerful engines, better tracks, and improved handling, making snowmobiles faster and more maneuverable than ever before. By the 1950s, Bombardier's company, Ski-Doo, started mass-producing snowmobiles, and suddenly, the floodgates opened. Other companies jumped in, tweaking designs and improving engines. By the 1960s, snowmobiles weren't just for farmers or utility workers anymore. They were fast, fun, and ready for adventure. The snowmobile boom had begun, and with it, a wave of new brands rushed onto the scene, each one trying to outdo the competition. Companies like Polaris, Arctic Cat, and even Yamaha started making their mark, each creating machines that could handle more rugged terrain and reach higher speeds than ever before. And for a while, it seemed like there was room for everyone, until your snowmobile broke down halfway through the ride, and you had to explain to your buddies that you were just testing the engine's endurance. But despite the occasional breakdown, the competition kept pushing manufacturers to innovate faster, making the 1960s and 1970s the golden era for snowmobiles. The thrill of snowmobiling was no longer just about getting from point A to point B. It was about how fast you could go, how high you could jump, and how much snow you could throw in the air. If you want to relive those early snowmobile memories, hit the like button, share your best breakdown stories in the comments, And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the snowmobile world. Let's keep the ride alive. In the mid-1960s, one brand emerged as a serious contender in the snowmobile wars: Snowjet. Founded in Quebec in 1965, Snowjet quickly became a fan favorite thanks to its sleek designs and powerful engines. By the late 60s, their machines were tearing up trails and racetracks across North America. Snowjet's secret weapon? Their partnership with Yamaha. Unlike many of their competitors, Snowjet used high-performance Yamaha engines, giving their sleds a significant edge in speed and reliability. The company's racing success only fueled its popularity, and by the early 1970s, Snowjet was selling tens of thousands of snowmobiles annually. But then, the oil crisis of 1973 hit, and the entire snowmobile industry took a blow. Rising fuel prices and economic downturns meant fewer people could afford recreational vehicles. Snowjet struggled to stay afloat and was eventually bought by Kawasaki in 1976. While Kawasaki continued to produce Snowjet models for a few years, by 1980, the brand was gone. Rupp Industries started in the 1950s as a go-kart manufacturer, but by the 1960s, they had expanded into snowmobiles. Based in Mansfield, Ohio, Rupp became known for its flashy designs and performance-focused sleds. Their Nitro and Snow Sport models were built for speed, attracting riders who wanted a machine that could handle sharp turns and deep powder with ease. These snowmobiles became the go-to choice for riders who wanted not just to get around, but to feel the ride. There was nothing quite like the thrill of opening up a Rupp on a fresh powder trail. During the early 1970s, Rupp was one of the hottest brands on the market, competing directly with the big names. Rupp snowmobiles were fast, sleek, and built for adventure, kind of like that one friend who always insists on taking the steepest hill, even though you're sure you'll end up at the bottom on foot. The brand quickly became synonymous with high-performance machines, taking part in races and dominating trails. But with this success came competition, and soon, the rising costs of production and an increasingly saturated market made it harder for smaller manufacturers like Rupp to keep up. However, like Snowjet, Rupp fell victim to the economic downturn of the mid-70s. Financial troubles forced the company to sell off assets in 1973, and by 1978, Rupp Industries was out of the snowmobile business entirely. One minute, they were flying high, and the next it was all over. Kind of like when you try to hit that jump but end up face first in the snow. If you ever had the thrill of riding a Rupp, or remember those wild days of performance sleds, hit the like button, share your memories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to keep the spirit of vintage snowmobiling alive. By the late 1970s, the snowmobile industry had consolidated. Rising production costs, fuel shortages, and changing consumer habits forced smaller brands out. The golden era of dozens of competing snowmobile brands quickly faded as larger companies dominated the market. The smaller manufacturers that once thrived on innovation and performance were unable to compete with the massive production capabilities of brands like Ski-Doo and Polaris. It was like showing up to a snowmobile race with a go-kart. Great if you're just out for a fun ride, but not quite what the crowd was expecting. Some companies tried to diversify their product lines, but most simply couldn't keep up with the rapid advancements in engine efficiency and suspension systems. Additionally, government regulations on emissions and noise levels placed further strain on struggling manufacturers. Many of the once beloved names in the industry were forced to shut their doors forever, leaving only a few to survive. Kind of like when you start the season with 5 sleds in the garage. But by the end of winter, only the trusty one that actually runs remains. As these regulations tightened, manufacturers had to invest in costly new technologies to meet standards, but many simply couldn't keep up. Innovation slowed, and the competitive edge that once defined these brands was lost. With fewer players in the market, the industry became more uniform, and the diversity of snowmobiles that once captivated enthusiasts began to disappear. What was once a vibrant, competitive landscape became dominated by a handful of major players, leaving the golden age of variety and experimentation in the rearview mirror. If you remember the days when every brand had its moment in the spotlight, give this video a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to keep the legacy of these classic brands alive. Today, vintage snowmobiles are prized by collectors. Restored models from Snowjet, Rupp, and John Deere can fetch high prices. Enthusiasts keep the memory of these brands alive, organizing vintage snowmobile rallies and races to celebrate the golden era of the sport. Social media groups and online forums have also fueled interest in these forgotten brands. Restorers share tips on finding rare parts, rebuilding engines, and keeping these vintage sleds running. Some collectors even argue that these classic machines have more personality than modern snowmobiles, kind of like that one uncle's old truck. Rusty, loud, and probably slower than it should be, but it just has character. The online community is filled with people who share a passion for preserving these machines, organizing meetups, and showing off their restored sleds. The sense of camaraderie among enthusiasts keeps the spirit of these classic brands alive. While these brands may be gone, their legacy still echoes across snowy trails, reminding us of a time when winter belonged to the wild and the fearless. For those who remember, or are lucky enough to own, a vintage sled, the thrill of firing up one of these machines is like stepping back in time to a golden era of adventure, innovation, and speed. Sure, it might not start on the first try and might smoke like a BBQ at full throttle, but there's something magical about the sound of that engine roaring to life. Riding a vintage snowmobile is more than just a ride. It's a connection to the past, a celebration of the pioneers who made the sport what it is today. These machines represent a time when every ride was an adventure and every startup was a challenge. If you've got a vintage snowmobile or just love the nostalgia behind them, hit that like button, share your favorite memories in the comments, and subscribe to keep these legendary sleds rolling through time. Let's keep the adventure alive and make sure the legacy of these incredible machines never fades.